so many of the words that you're using are tossed around as a given, and it's like, but at what point are we truly taught how to be productive, a productive team member, how to be an effective communicator? You know, we don't always get those kind of seemingly obvious needed lessons. And so I think that this collection helps to address that and pretty quickly without this long, drawn out kind of arduous approach to it. It gives us the skill sets in a almost in a simulation format. A lot of us learn as we go when it comes to nuances of being a professional, right? I mean, we make so many mistakes. So, what do you think the benefit is of spending time thinking through this level of content before, like you gave it to your daughter and said, "Here, we don't know when you may experience some of this, but what's the benefit of her having the opportunity to think through some of these things beforehand?"
Right. Well, there were two facets of that. One is how was this material used sort of in teaching? And the model there was that these articles, which are short, they're maybe a page and a half, there may be a 3 minute if you listen to a podcast episode. So they're bite size, right? It's not a big thing. It's not a whole course. It's not a whole book. It's something you could digest certainly in one sitting. But students were asked to look at that, pick one, read it, reflect on it, um, and then summarize it and present it back to their peers, maybe in the form of a one-page PowerPoint, one slide, or a short email or something like that. So there's this pattern of you're going to begin something to absorb. In my case, generally read it or listen to it. So if something's going to happen, you're going to have to be able to summarize that. That's a skill you need all the time in the workforce. You have to be able to be to find what are the key concepts in anything you've been exposed to and net that out for other people. And actually, as you move up the communication toward the top of the organization, particularly a hierarchical one, they tend to want less and less information. They want it netted out. They want to know the bottom line. They say, just net it out for me. Just tell me what's the key takeaway. There's another thing sometimes called a completed work or a kind of work where the person is only being asked, the manager is only being asked to approve or not. They don't need all the background. They assume you've done all that. They have all of that analysis if they want it, but they just want to know sort of what to do. So the summarizing task is very important, and you benefit from practice like you do from anything else. And then the last one is to present it. So you have to compose the presentation, which is a skill, and then you have to speak in public, which is something that a lot of people are hesitant to do, but is critical. And in fact, I think one of the skills that can accelerate your career professionally, since most people don't want to talk in public, if you're willing to do it, you'll get picked to do it. You volunteer to do it, and you will be exposed to more opportunities faster because the person who's speaking is often then asked follow-up questions and taken aside and followed up and stuff like that. So that's one thing. And then just the act of thinking, a little bit like investing in your career every once in a while, sometimes called bulletproofing your career. People are told you should spend a certain amount of time every week building your network on LinkedIn or things like that. Well, I think this practice of reflecting, thinking about things, when it isn't in the moment, when it is more of an investment in your professional development, it can be a good practice. And so I think that's the other part of sort of brain training here that you get by, say, reading one of these yourself once a week as part of your own self-directed professional development, whether it was assigned by a mentor or you just, or you're part of some group at a company that decided to do it collectively, or you're doing it, on your own.
So, similar to muscle memory for, let's say, athletes. I mean, you play like you practice. And so being able to kind of go through those simulations and think through how it might play out can be pretty beneficial in my experience with these pieces for sure. And Jeff, did your how did your daughter? I know we're off the script just a little bit, but I'm very interested in how your daughter um, um, approached this, and did she work through it on her own? Did she spend time with a study buddy? I mean, how did she choose to use these pieces?
Well, it turns out that's a timely question. So, my daughter's now on her second job. So, she graduated college, she had a first job, almost 3 years, now is in the second job. And one of the things that she was asked to do, and as part of sort of new hire things, was to tell people something about herself and that they might find interesting. So she said, "Well, my father wrote a book about these, sort of business nuggets," and there was some interest by a couple of the other people in the new hire cohort, and so one of those people bought the book and said, "Oh, this is great. Let's see what we do." So they bought the book. Now they only bought one copy, and they photocopied articles for each other. But anyway, they started to meet once a week, and they call it Talk Around. And what they do is, I think there's four of them. They get together, they pick two articles each week, one of them, they're going in a rotation, and then they think about them and they talk about them, during the preceding days. And then the purpose is to say, well, do we agree with this? Do we not? Have we run into this situation? How might we handle it? And I think she's actually enjoying that, and that's building a sort of peer rapport. Prior to that, she said sometimes the material was very timely, right? Just before she needed it. Some of the material she recognized was not yet relevant, but at least she had, was familiar with it and could refer back. And more of that had to do with, say, the things that are related to when you're a first line manager. Some institutions are looking at doing this in a mentoring, raw material from mentors. So sort of corporate environment, you assign somebody a mentor. The mentor is always looking for things to do the mentoring task around. So having something that they can assign, is useful. I mentioned before, you can do this in a sort of faculty student model where you say, look, there was a graduate seminar in psychology where all the graduate students were still working, and this material was used to say to each student, pick something from the collection and then put out a discussion post about it, and we'll talk about it. And that's in fact that was the way that the topic we're going to go into in just a minute about joining an existing team came about across a couple of semesters of a course. That was the one question, the one topic that bubbled to the top as the most frequently self-selected subject for these graduate students. So they, for whatever reason, this must have been something that sparked their interest. And so they, time and again, people selected this one and worked through it and talked about it.
That's fascinating. And that whole idea about managing up is a skill set that we're never taught either. And it's so critical in the workplace. Being able to support and help my supervisors do a better job at getting things done is only going to benefit me. So whatever I can do to help them help me, that is going to make my life and my work that much more effective. So totally agree with that. How else do you see these pieces being used to grow strategic skill sets? I mean, we've talked about it being in kind of a team setting. We've talked about it being in an academic setting with the graduate psych students. What else do you see working?
Well, there's a weekly podcast that basically is me reading the article of the week. And people have told me that's great. You know, they're on their way to work, they're doing something, and they just want to grab
Smart.
a couple of minutes of professional development. There's a lunch and learn. I'm doing a thing called a power hour for a group that does fundraising for a university in California. So they have about 100 people in the organization, about 10 of whom are sort of new. But they all get together for what they call a power hour, and they bring in a speaker, uh, motivational or educational or whatever the need is, and they do that once a month. So they're launching this, and then the action item is to basically say, well, look, we're going to maybe license this material as sort of a digital library of articles, and you should go and serve yourselves. I mean, some of this material, I'll be frank, is for people who want to do the work of professional development, right? It is one of the cases where you're going to get out what you put in. If you skim everything and don't spend the time to think about it and try to apply it, then you won't get very much out of it because you haven't put very much into it. And so one of the reading paths I suggest is you could just read it all quickly, find the things you like, and then go deeper on those. Or you can, focus on a particular subject, like let's say time management was important to you, you felt you weren't doing that. And that actually came up in another sort of anecdotal situation. Somebody was telling me that their child, whatever, was having meetings back to back to back every time, every hour, on the hour, they had another meeting, and they were beside themselves with trying to figure out how to function in, with that pace. There was no break between the meetings. And I suggested to them, which is one of the articles, that they consider what's called a 50-minute hour, 50. And the idea there is simply, just because it's conventional to start on the hour doesn't mean you have to do that. And you could actually meet for 50 minutes as policy so that everybody gets 10 minutes left to learn, to write notes, to take a bio break, whatever they need, get their head clear for the next meeting. So a simple thing like that, which has been around for a long time as a business idea, professional idea, that the cadence of every hour exactly to its completion is maybe not the most effective time management. And I would argue that almost every hour-long meeting could be done in 50 minutes. In fact, that's a good discipline, right, to try to do that. But that's some of the ways that the material is being used.
Okay. Well, I think that lunch and learn idea is super smart and effective. I've attended lots of lunch and learns in the past, and what I'm always looking for is something pretty quick to digest with my lunch and then be able to use it immediately without doing a whole lot of additional research and background development. So I think these are perfect for that. If you have a group of students, for instructors that, I mean, really at any level of preparation to go into the workforce, this is a fantastic way to help them start to think about, what does that professional dialogue look like? And how do I want to present myself as a new professional coming into the workforce? And so these are things that I think education, certainly community colleges, but also 4 years and grad school are really thinking more about and talking more about. So this is a perfect way to help walk them through it without having to dedicate huge amounts of your curricular time to it. They're quick. I've used a couple of these pieces with a group of entrepreneurial women that I help facilitate. And Jeff and I wrote questions to go along with these, and I presented it kind of in a book club format, if you will. So divided the group in half, so each group got their own little article and set of questions. They were different topics, and the group loved them. They loved them, especially the one on 30, 60, 90. And in fact, And then the 30, 60, 90 has to do with goal setting. The group that didn't get the 30, 60, 90 and got to listen to the conversation of the 30, 60, 90 group after they had done some discussion and were debriefing, they were like, we want that article. We want to see those questions. We think we can probably use them in our own kind of personal development. So very impactful, quick and easy to use. It was um, for people who they didn't have to do any prep work coming into it. I mean, it's just a very smart approach to soft skills. And I like to describe it as kind of soft skills on steroids, if you will, because these are upper level kinds of skills that it's not just showing up. You got to be there. You got to show up. But what happens next? These are these kind of this next level discussions.